Do you remember the decorum of the Hillary Democrats 4 years ago? Well, you see the Republican decorum this year in 2020. Our decorum is, look, we're not happy. We think that there are voting irregularities. We think mass ballot mailing out has caused enormous amounts of fraud, or at the very least has provided an opportunity in these blue cities for fraud. I think we're going to find that too. I do. I'm not sure it'll be enough to change the outcome of the election. Not suggesting that, but we don't know. I mean, it's 2020, anything's possible. So if you remember the decorum of the Hillary Democrats 4 years ago, well, here's a quick example of the way they act when they lose versus the way we act when things aren't necessarily at the moment going our way. We have that clip, and here it is.
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President Obama is the ex-president. And Mr. Trump, for the moment, steps away for the inaugural address.
What a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J.
Tap on the shoulder. Adjust the microphone as you told, man.
So that's Democrat decorum. It's like, no! And, that is, I'm sorry, that is, I want my trophy. I lost, but I still want my trophy so I can go home and show mama. Sorry, that's the way I see it as a Republican. Because I will tell you, yes, this election has been, it's difficult to watch. It's very difficult. It was difficult to watch the first debate too. We talked about that in a previous podcast. We did not think Donald Trump did such a hot job in the first debate, and he may have paid the price for that in this election. But let's face it, the deck was completely and utterly stacked against him. And what I want to make sure, as a conservative, is that the deck isn't stacked against him in an election where massive fraud was undertaken in major cities with ballot harvesting. And in order, even if you are a far left progressive and you're listening to this podcast, you have a responsibility, as do we, to make sure that every election that is held in the future has the American people's utmost confidence that the election was held in a free and fair manner. And we have a process, and we're going through that process. And as I said, we're going to talk about that process with a number of clips in this podcast about why it's important to be able to regain that confidence that American elections are actually followed in such a way that there is confidence, 100% confidence. So before we go there, Jennifer Rubin of the Washington Post said on MSNBC a year ago, this is a year ago, but we're bringing this up because apparently AOC has said the same thing. Jennifer Rubin of the Washington Post, if you want to really call it, we call it the Washington Compost. Back when I was in college, we called it Pravda on the Potomac because Pravda was the newspaper in the Soviet Union. So we always thought that they were parroting Pravda, but now they're just parroting the woke crowd. So Jennifer Rubin, a year ago, said that, you know what, when Donald Trump loses, we're going to purge the GOP and the entire Republican Party. Very scary stuff that even anyone would say this, but of course it was on MSNBC. Anything's possible on MSNBC. We have that clip, and here it is.
It's not only that Trump has to lose, but that all his enablers have to lose. We have to collectively, in essence, burn down the Republican Party. We have to level them, because if there are survivors, if there are people who weathered this storm, they will do it again. They will take this as confirmation that, hey, it just pays to ride the waves. Look at me, I've made it through. And so up and down the ticket, federal, state, local offices, the country has to repudiate this.
Yeah, so the country has to repudiate this. We have to just really burn down the Republican Party. We need to purge the Republican Party. You know what? In a country that is a republic and it's a democratic republic, what we want is for there to be a two-party system at a minimum. You don't want to burn down a party so that you have a one-party state. That never goes so well throughout world history. But if you work for the Washington Post, you can say these incredibly stupid things but they're also dangerous, right? They're also incredibly dangerous. And who else said something incredibly stupid and dangerous? Who else but AOC? She says, she's facing heat for wanting to archive online posts by Trump sycophants. So listen to this. So AOC said just this week the same thing that Rubin said at the Washington Post a year ago, but AOC's saying it right now. It's like, get this. She's saying that anyone, I hope that someone is archiving these Trump sycophants for when they try to downplay or deny their complicity in the future. I foresee decent probability of many deleted tweets, writings, photos in the future, the lawmaker wrote. In other words, she's basically saying there should be a list. There should be a list and an archive of all the people who are sycophants because they dared support Donald Trump online in some way, or they wrote something favorable about the policies of Donald Trump. So AOC, guess what? That would be some 70 million plus people right now who voted for Donald Trump. So you're basically calling the deplorables, now they're sycophants. See, we used to be deplorables under Hillary Clinton. Now under AOC, we are sycophants. Imagine the kind of mental health problem you must have if you were writing off half of the country. I gotta tell you, podcast listeners, including the progressive podcast listeners, thank you for listening. I always say that because I do appreciate that. You can't write off half of the country. I don't write off half of the country. Do you think I don't listen to the other half of the country who voted against Donald Trump? Do you think that I just write them off and say, no, their problem is they all need to be, put on a list, and in the future we need to purge them and make sure that they go through re-education camps, maybe with the Uyghurs in China? But that's kind of what these people think. I don't think that. I want a two-party system. I want a vigorous two-party system. But I want a two-party system where people don't think it's appropriate to try to, exterminate the opposition. That's what it sounds like. It's sick. Ladies and gentlemen, that is just sick. But that's, unfortunately, the thought leaders, if you will, of the Democrat Party, including the so-called journalists and editorialists at the Washington Post, otherwise known as Jeff Bezos' playground in journalism.